Hello, everyone. You are here with Jennie and Laurie doing our MoonLore series. Today, we are going to be talking about the new moon in Leo, which occurs, tell me when, Jennie?
Well, I thought it was at 10:41.
10:41. Let me pull up the chart. Okay, so it is happening on August 18th at, yes, 10:41 p.m. Eastern time. If you live in a different time zone, you'll have to adjust for that. First of all, before we get started, I know a lot of people do a new moon ritual, and I always post a very, very simple one for people to work with. And because this new moon is happening at 10:41 at night, I want to encourage you to wait and do your ritual the following day. You want to give time for the sun and the moon to move a little bit apart before you do your ritual. So now, in thinking about the new moon, the reason we have a ritual specifically for the new moon is because the new moon is the beginning of a new cycle. And at that new moon, you want to plant a seed to encourage the growth of whatever you determine, depending on the house that it falls in. With the new moon in Leo, you want to plant a seed of joy and pleasure and leadership ability, those kind of Leo things. So you want to look at your chart, determine what house Leo is held in your chart. You want to look for the symbol of Leo and the house if you're looking counterclockwise, which is how you need to be looking at this, you want to look for the sign of Leo, and whatever house that follows that symbol, that's the house that you want to think about issues of leadership, joy, pleasure, performance, dramatic self-expression. You want to think of planting a seed in that area. So what do you have to say about this particular new moon, Jennie? I know you've thought about it a lot and looked at it a lot more than I have.
Well, let's start with just think about where this new moon is happening in the northern hemisphere to do with our summer season. We are at the waning of summer. We still have summer, so get outside and enjoy it while you can. But we are in the wane. We're going to move after this kind of season of the lazy lion. We're going to be moving into harvest season next, so things are going to get busy. So now is your moment to really soak that up. So that's the first thing I would say about it is new moon in Leo is always reminding us of that, regardless of the year. But also, I think right away you can't help but notice the sun and moon are together and Mercury's right there too. So that's the first thing.
There you have it.
So I was thinking of that. There's not much gap here between your thoughts and your feelings and your actions.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of gap. That's kind of the first thing that comes to mind for me. And followed probably the very next thing is to take a look at Mars over there in Aries. So it's over by the ascendant there. So that is an exact trine. Or very close, not exact, very close.
Very close.
So that brings tremendous force and power to something that is already fiery. So a lot of fire going on here, a lot of things about expression and all the things you can think of with fire that's outward tend to be associated with more kind of yang aspects of being.
It certainly gives a lot of action energy to the seed you're planting. The seed you're planting has a lot of energy to grow with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's probably the most immediate thing. It's obvious.
Right.
And the most, like the sort of most typical aspect, because as soon as you move away from this, you start getting into a little bit more esoteric aspects. I mean, nothing too crazy. But essentially, you will notice the other thing is the sun and the moon are at 26, Leo. So look at what else is at 26. If you look at the top of the chart, we see Saturn. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a 150-degree aspect. It's not one of the 5 immediate ones you think about. This is the quincunx. And this is an angle that's a little more, it's a little awkward. There's a little chafing. There's not a lot of common ground between Leo and the shining, regal, bright, you know, and then Saturn's like cold and dark, and Capricorn is, you know, Saturn in Capricorn. It really brings the Earth, more yin aspect to things. So
there's a hard adjustment. It's interesting because it's like Mars is giving it all this energy and Saturn is saying, not quite.
Yeah, right.
It's
and
holding it back.
Yeah. And also Mars, while it's happily trining Sun, Moon, it's squaring Saturn. So there's definitely, that's the sticky part of this setup, is Mars is filling that Sun and Moon and Mercury with fire, but it's also like very stuck up against that Saturn.
It's really interesting to think about that configuration. And you know, in your own life, look at where these planets are in your own chart, and where that desire to be expressed in that big Leo way is being supported by the area of your life that holds Aries, and where it's being kind of restricted and forced to make awkward adjustments from the house that holds Capricorn. So you can look at that in your own chart and just kind of feel how those energies are playing out, and finding ways to make the adjustment needed to be supported by Saturn, and using that strong Mars and Aries energy to continue moving forward.
Yeah. So while you're saying that, Laurie, you're making me think about, so that configuration of Mars and Saturn, that's like sitting in your car with the gas full on and the brake full on.
Yeah.
And so, and that's, and I mean, it's kind of the perfect description of it. But I was trying to twist that around in my mind. So what's a helpful configuration of that? Well, I think a helpful configuration is having some boundaries around this raging inferno. So having this very contained, highly energetic situation would, I think, in its best configuration.
And one other thing I want to say about that sense of both the brakes and the gas being on at the same time is because Mars is going to be going retrograde very soon now, in early September. We need to get comfortable with that. We need to kind of, you know, understand that difficulty is with us for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, sorry.
I see this as the postal service problems.
Yeah, or I mean, the whole COVID, Mars, open everything up, go, 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 and then Saturn's like, yeah, but there's a pandemic, people, like this. Vote
by mail. Oh my God, don't vote by mail. Yeah, I mean, all of these things are kind of, and in our personal lives, we can see where it shows up as well. It's fascinating.
The final thing I want to say about those 3 things is just that each of those things, the Sun, Mars, and Saturn, are all in their own signs. So what that does is it makes them all stronger. The Sun rules Leo, Mars rules Aries, Saturn rules Capricorn. So they're all very strong and they're very opinionated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're going to hear a lot about it with that Mercury in there. There's going to be a lot of conversations that are not going to be easy, that are going to be very, very fiery. And there's a lot going on right now. And it's reflected everywhere we look. Yeah. So, what was the other one you wanted to talk about? The nodes. How this plays in with the nodes is really interesting. We talked a little bit about that, didn't we, Jenny?
Yeah, so we were talking briefly about the grand trine in this chart. So you have Mars trine, you know, the Sun, Moon, Mercury configuration, but those 2 things also trine the South Node in Sagittarius. And it's a pretty tight trine. So a trine, the grand trine like this suggests it'd be very easy just to be in this. Like,
Oh.
Mars fires up the sun and the moon, and then it's like into the south node of Sagittarius, which is, basically very opinionated and could be very bombastic. And it's in the, actually, I'm not going to say that because it's only in our area. But anyway, so you have that. And what was it we were talking about earlier? That it's, the trine is something that's just automatically there.
Right. So the automatic tendency is going to go to the south node, which is the past, which represents a past story. And there's going to be an automatic tendency to go to something of the past when it's going to take a little more effort with the sextile aspect. It's going to take more effort and conscious awareness to move forward to the north node, which is in Gemini. It's more really getting curious and looking forward rather than automatically going to the old opinions of what has worked in the past.
Yeah, and speaking the truth about value. Well, that's sort of what I see with that north node Gemini. Like speaking that, wanting to, you got to reach a little bit to speak well, to speak truly, to speak kindly. Whereas it'd be pretty easy to be stuck in that.
I think that's a really important piece of this cycle, is not going to automatically what's easy, going to what has to be thought through a little more. And then with this chart, another thing I want to make sure we bring forward, you had mentioned to me the Uranus and Venus being part of this story as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that, Jenny?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you'll notice that both Uranus and Venus are 10 degrees. So Uranus 10 Taurus, Venus 10 Cancer. So they're in a good sextile, tight sextile together. So that's the only contact that Uranus is making in this chart. So in other words, the message Uranus has to give us is, Uranus has to hand it to Venus, because Venus does make a contact with the new moon. It's a semi-square. It's 45 degrees, so it's half of a square. So it's similar to a square. There's tension. It's not quite as strong as a full square. But what I read this as is Venus is trying to interrupt that fiery, like, bombastic, like, let's go out there and be a warrior and roar, and Venus is kind of saying, hey, hold on. I think there might be something different we could do here. And Venus is holding the message of Uranus. And what my head goes to is that Uranus is trying to wake us up. Uranus is the disruptor and the awakener, and it's trying to wake us up. And in this case, the only way it can do it is, in this particular chart, is just to do it through that Venus. So Venus, I kind of think of Venus as like the mother of the sun in Leo here, going, hey, you're misbehaving. Come on, there's another way to do this. It's not all just about fire and fury.
Yeah, it's so easy right now with all that's going on in our culture. It's so easy to go to that automatic, I've got these opinions, I'm angry, I've got all this fiery energy. But to listen to that little interrupting voice of kindness and listening and being curious about what it would look like to take all that fiery, strong energy, and rather than using it automatically, to think it through and be curious and listen, rather than going to the automatic. I love that. I think we have a hard time listening to people whose opinions are different than our own. But if everyone is sitting in their own camp, holding their opinions without listening, then there's no space for anyone to shift and see things from a different perspective. And I think this really offers us an ability to do that. Is that, it's interesting. Interesting.
I think it's just, trying to get the message of the times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So for this new moon, we have to plant a seed of, really learning to listen as we speak, learning to bring our creative conversation to the topics at hand, and get curious and share information instead of being so bombastic, uh, and listening to that little kind voice of Cancer,
mhm.
Venus in Cancer. Um, Jennie had written a piece about this that I'm going to attach with this video so that you can read through that as well, which will give you more information. But for now, is there anything else that you want to bring into this conversation at this point, Jennie?
No, other than just consider for yourself where this falls in your chart.
Right.
Yeah.
Considering where it falls in your chart, in 2 weeks at the full moon, we will see some illumination of the seed that's planted. And then in another 6 months at the Leo full moon, we'll see an expanded growth of the seed that's planted now. And pay attention, you're planting your own little seed in your life, dependent on where that Leo is in your chart. Pay attention to how you see seeds being planted out in the world, in the culture, as well. So for you, Jennie, what house does this land in?
It's the second house for me. The
Second
Leo.
house.
So it's
Okay.
very much the question is, how can I be more kind to myself? How can I really just celebrate what I do have to offer?
Okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing, with that new moon in your second house, spend some money on yourself, for that growth of self-worth and all that. I think I gave you a few more books to add on to a list for a book order, and that would be the time to do it on the 19th. For me, it lands in the 12th house. What do you think? What seed should I be thinking about planting?
I mean, I was thinking about what actions you can take that will bring warmth to people in suffering, people who are suffering. So that was kind of,
planting a seed to bring warmth and generosity of Leo to people that are in those dark 12th house places.
But
Cool.
also, go ahead and get that consultation for yourself.
Oh yes, I think I'm going to do that. I was telling Jennie earlier that I think for one of my birthday presents, I want to actually get an astrology consultation, because it's probably been 30 years since I've had one. So I think I will do that. All right. Thank you, Jennie. And let me actually stop this for a moment to say goodbye to you. It's been great talking, and we'll do another video in 2 weeks for the full moon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jennie. Bye-bye.
Bye.